Julian, thanks for joining me today. I'm looking forward to learning more about solar energy and Nokomis Energy. And let's start by talking about your background. So, I see you started in solar over a decade ago. So, can you give me an overview of what your career has looked like in this industry?
Yeah, definitely thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. And kind of as we were talking at the outset, I just think it's really great that a show like this is really focusing on local energy, and I think that just speaks to what's going on in the energy industry right now in general. I got into this space in 2007. I was coming out of college, and I kind of I didn't really know what I wanted to do, like most people, and I told myself I wanted to do like business for good. You know, a lot of people think of it as sustainability or triple bottom line, and I'd read books about that. I'd read Green to Gold or some of the ecology of commerce, and I read this book called "Let My People Go Surfing" by Yvon Chouinard, who founded Patagonia.
Yeah.
And I just thought, Patagonia, what a great company. I want to work for a company like that. And so I went out to California and got a job with Patagonia, and it's a great company. It wasn't the right type of job for me. And while I was there, I had a friend who got a job with a company called Solar City. And Solar City at the time was about 100-person shop trying to figure out how to scale residential solar installation in California. And so, you know, I started there in 2007. I was on the ground floor. I was installing residential solar on people's homes before we really knew we had it all figured out. We had all the processes, we had all the products. And so we were really solving a lot of problems in real time. And the real goal of that company was just to solve the implementation challenge. How do we get this stuff out there into the world, generating clean energy for us? And so, fast forward, I was there until 2014. And I said I was about the 100 person when I started. There were about 10,000 people when I left. It was just a rocket ship.
Yeah.
It had gone public. Elon Musk was the chairman. It was Tesla money that had kind of, or really PayPal money that had funded it originally, seeded it.
Mhm.
And so it was really kind of like a solar contractor backed by, venture capital. And when you're on a rocket ship like that, you just get exposed to so much and really, in a sense, see the birth of an industry. And so I was lucky enough to be there and work with a ton of great people, and um, really just be exposed from the beginning about, what the good ideas were about how to do this.
Mhm. Great. So that led you to founding Nokomis Energy around 4 years ago, right?
Yeah, yeah. So after leaving Solar City, I moved back to the Midwest. I'm from the Kansas area. My wife is from Minnesota originally, and we were really excited to get back here where, California, kind of a lot of this was happening early on. There wasn't as much happening in the Midwest in solar. A ton of wind here, obviously. And so I was really excited when we kind of moved back here, more for personal reasons, to kind of see what was going on in the industry. And it turns out, Minnesota has really been thinking about this for a long time, and I definitely applaud the state for trying to lead on these things. Um, when I got here, I kind of looked around, kind of met some other people in this space, and uh, I'd say in 2017 we started to kind of get the sense that there was kind of a sea change happening, where large national developers were starting to kind of be more selective about the markets they were chasing, and whether that's they were needing to show more returns or projects getting tighter, whatever the reason, it became obvious that that was a time for the regional developer to kind of show up, to step up. If the national guy is going to leave, that maybe margins are getting tighter, maybe projects are getting more difficult to do, and I think that's when a good regional developer can really create value and continue to push things forward. And so in 2017, we kind of felt like we saw that trend, and put the shop together. Really, the intention of Nokomis is to bring national kind of pedigree when it comes to understanding how to do good kind of clean energy development at a national level, but then be very regionally focused. Bring those best practices local when national is solving best practices. But there's also a ton of aspects of development where being local, being present, being the actual person on the other side of the deal, is really meaningful. Building trust. And so, Nokomis is really founded as a way to say we can do kind of the best of both worlds. We can bring the best practices of national clean energy development, but also be very regionally focused and unlock projects that wouldn't have gotten unlocked otherwise.
Mm, that's interesting. So who's a typical client for Nokomis?
We really service the municipal, commercial, industrial markets. So we're really looking at big electricity users. If you use 250,000 kilowatt hours or more a year, a million kilowatt hours more a year, we that's who we're talking to every day. That's who we're trying to help every day. And the majority of those customers are looking for lower cost and cleaner electricity, and that's really our focus. But some customers are really chasing more visible sustainability goals. Some customers are really trying to facilitate more local ownership. It's more of an economic development activity, and so our real focus is to work with those large customers, those large users, really understand what their real goals are, and then be able to tailor solutions that meet those, and hopefully lower their electricity costs at the same time.
Right, right, yeah. I noticed on your website that you guys have two specific service types, it looks like. So you have your community solar sites and then your on-site solar systems. Can you give me a brief overview of those two different types of systems? And if possible, how many units of each you've installed or how many acres, if that's
Yeah,
possible?
yeah. So, just broadly today, Nokomis has done about 50 megawatts. That's about 250 acres of solar. The majority of that today is community solar. And if you think about the electricity grid, there's really three places where you can connect a solar system or really any power plant, any generator to the electricity grid. You can do it behind your meter, on your rooftop at your business. You can do it on the distribution system. So the poles and wires that have the little transformers running to your businesses, or you can do it on the transmission system. What people might call the big grid, the big cross country, wires that participate and support the wholesale system. Nokomis really focuses on everything on the distribution and behind the meter. And so what that means is that community solar is, for the most part, you could think of it as like a virtual off taker. We're going to tie to the distribution system somewhere, and then you could be the buyer of those electricity credits or those electricity benefits through a combination of contracting with us and being a customer of the utility, like in this case, Xcel Energy. And then behind the meter, would be obviously facilities right at your site. So we've majority done community solar to date, but we have a large number of behind the meter projects, in the late stages of development now, and we're excited to hopefully soon get to start talking about some of those, and really start to really demonstrate that customers have both of those options when it comes to looking for solutions here.
Mhm. Great. Have you seen your customers change over the past 4 years that you've been in this market?
Not really. To be honest, it's really just about helping more people realize that this is an option for them. I think as long as I think this industry has been around, it's still brand new for a lot of people.
Mhm.
Minnesota, especially, is a regulated energy market, and because of that, you have a monopoly. And the nature of a monopoly is that people feel like they have one choice, and so they're kind of just takers when it comes to price or things like that. And so it is quite interesting to spend time with facilities managers, CFOs, those people trying to really understand for the first time that they have these options, and what are they and how do they even analyze energy. So I think a lot of what we're doing right now is just helping people understand their options. I think this is a long-term process where we're taking the entire energy system from being, I've got one place I can buy my electricity, to I have a couple choices now. And, that's not going to change. That's all, going forward, people are always going to have choices now. And this is really the first time they've really had that. And so I think it's really just more customers showing up, not necessarily different ones.
Mhm. Yeah. So with that, it sounds like an expansion of the industry, right? What are some noticeable trends you've seen in the solar industry? I know that's a big question, so feel free to take that any direction.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reason we're sitting here today is how dramatically costs have come down.
Mhm.
We can't exist unless we can create an economic benefit, really, for our customers. So, I think as much as everybody is excited about the clean aspects of electricity, I think all electricity is getting clean. I mean, wind is, providing almost 40% of electricity in Minnesota this year, to date. So, electricity is getting clean, and that's really exciting. And like any market, it's going to be about how do you find the most economic, most competitive scenario for yourselves, scenario that shows your commitments to sustainability, but really also delivering costs. So I think we've seen dramatic cost reductions. A solar panel, when I started installing in 2007, cost about, I'll just use some industry language here, $3 a watt, and they were about 175 watt panels. I think this year we will install 440 watt panels, so almost a 3x in the efficiency of the module. And that module that costs $3 a watt now costs 30 cents a watt. And
Mhm.
so you've just seen dramatic cost reductions in technology. And I think those cost reductions are mirrored on the wind side too.
Mhm.
Um, and they're primarily due to the fact that we're developing technology. We're developing phones, computers. There's no fuel input. The sun was free 10 years ago, and it's free now. And so I think that's a real difference, and what allows you to see these cost trends going down and staying down because we don't have fuel risk and things like that. So I'd say that's number one. I think number two is just the number of people aware of these things. Um, it's fascinating. And then I think number three is I almost think we've kind of gone through a period where um, everybody was just pretty gung ho about this, and now we're starting to run into more of the complex situations. We're starting to get a lot of, wind and solar on the system, and the system wasn't originally built thinking about that. And
Mhm.
so we're running into more of these complexities. And so one of the things we like to think about at Nokomis is there's a lot of low hanging fruit out there still, I think, when it comes to deploying clean energy. And there are a lot of great companies that are doing this work. There's a lot of great companies here in Minnesota. There's a lot of great companies nationally. And, that's exciting. And I think we didn't really form Nokomis thinking, hey, let's just go, compete for that low hanging fruit. We really have been thinking about let's go solve those hard problems. That's really when you create value. And so I think we're starting to see those more and more in Minnesota, in the upper Midwest. And I think that's exciting for us because I think that's going to be a place where we can really help those groups who, maybe they went and said, I want to do this and got told no by somebody, whether that was the utility, the developer, the community. And, that's when it's time for us, I think, to show up and help navigate that conversation, bring, I think, what is kind of best in class development skills to the table to look at all of the problems and bring those skills to bear to try and solve and get the customer what they want while
Mhm.
bringing the community along.
Great. So, what were some of those problems Nokomis had to overcome, and are there any problems still lingering to this day?
Yeah. I think that we will only continue to see more challenging problems, more complex problems. Kind of going back a little bit to the utility system we have today. It's a monopoly, it's a regulated system, and it has its own incentive structure. Utilities are incented to spend money building infrastructure and get a return on that capital. And when a customer puts solar on their building or something, they simply lower the revenue that they're sending to the utility and keep more of that for themselves, give some of that to the solar developer, the solar operator. Um, and so, those are not fully aligned incentives, and there's a lot of work that has to be done there. You have to, to kind of get everybody to play ball. I think additionally, as we see a lot of clean energy come on the system, we run into what we would call interconnection capacity constraints. And, that's kind of the technical term to say at some point you can't put more electricity onto a wire.
Mhm.
And, there are scenarios where you may have a large solar field at the end of the distribution feeder that your home is connected to. And you may go say, I'm ready to put solar on my roof. And lo and behold, the utility says, we can't have you pushing any more electricity out onto the system because we've already got too much out there. The system would be overloaded then. And so, those are places where I think, the simple approach that we have today creates these limitations. And as we go forward, we're going to have to deploy, more creative solutions, bring more intelligence to the distribution system, dig deeper in our engineering analyses to say, am I being too conservative here? Can we do more? And I think that's not going to be something that everybody in that conversation who needs to be in that conversation is just going to be willfully excited to engage in. There are some groups that are happy with the system the way it is. And so I think that's where, customers are really going to have to, show up with us from time to time and say, this is what I really want. And I'm willing to kind of, push for it. And I think there's going to be a lot more of that. I think there's going to be a lot more of that. How do we continue to find ways to deploy more clean energy? So I think we see that today here. We see challenges with interconnecting with different utilities here, and a lot of those utilities are trying to do the right thing, but it's they're old. There's a legacy environment. You're kind of swimming through very regulatory and legislative environments that have been set up for different scenarios. And so there's the real immediate, can I solve a project, and then there's these longer term reforms to the electricity system here that I think both have to be tackled.
Yeah, I read that you wanted more people to come to the table, as they say, to solve some of those issues. So that was a great overview. So now to pivot to more of a basic question, you've kind of answered this already, but who can tap into solar energy right now? Is it just businesses and companies, or can renters and homeowners tap into it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's available to everybody. And I think of solar as just one of many ways to generate clean electricity. But if you've got a rooftop, you can think about it. If you are a large business with, a rooftop or a parking lot or, a field nearby, we can definitely do this. The utilities offer some solutions themselves. They're more kind of financial or credit-based systems, not necessarily direct ownership systems. And then, things like community solar, anybody who is at least in Excel territory, anybody who's an Excel customer can be a community solar subscriber. And so it really isn't limited. Nokomis, like we talked about before, focuses on a specific area of the industry that I think is underserved. But if you're a renter or a homeowner, there are, a lot of good companies in the area as well to service you.
Great. Well, I think that was everything that I wanted to ask about. So is there anything else you wanted to add in or emphasize?
I think that as I was kind of thinking about this conversation, and what's happening is true. I think one thing I think people should be aware of is just like any other growing industry right now. We were seeing it in real estate here around the Twin Cities. There is just a ton of capital coming into this space, and that's really driving prices down, and it's getting very competitive. And Minnesota has done a good job creating an environment for local companies to develop their skills and get to the point where they can really attract that type of capital to invest in the state. And so I think that's just one other thing for people to keep in mind, is that when you're working with a local developer, you're thinking about doing this, there's an additional benefit of drawing more capital investment into the state. We're starting to see a lot of investors locally actually get into the space too, which is really exciting as well. And so I think, from that more finance and investment community, I think there's a really awesome opportunity here to, put money to work, delivering clean electricity to, your neighbors, your constituents, your citizens. And so I'm really excited about those conversations. I'm really excited about conversations with the municipal utilities, cities, things like that, as they start to think, well, what are my electricity costs and how do I actually get it? And, is this, is what I've got today actually what I want in the future? Because, the next 10 to 15 years is really, the big energy transition. You know, we really haven't seen innovation in the space since it was set up. The grid of 1930 is the grid of today.
Mhm.
And the nature of distributed generation, you know, solar and storage and smart technologies, thermostats, is really going to upend that. You know, the regulations are on the books, and now it's about, you know, seeing that play out. So I think, you know, the thing I leave everybody with, and, you know, reach out to us and let's chat about it. You know, that's what we love to do, is talk to people about kind of what their goals are. But um, you know, this is really the next 10 to 15 years is really the opportunity to join and participate in this transition, and, you know, help have a say in, you know, what it's going to look like down the road. Is it going to be the same system we have today, or is it going to look different? Is it going to have different ownership? You know, is generation going to come from different places? And so, um, you know, that's, I think, what we're excited about is helping people understand how they can kind of join, you know, join the industry, and you know, be part of what I think is a, you know, another economic driver for the Upper Midwest.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Julian, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. This was super interesting.
Great. Yeah, happy to chat anytime.